There's more.
All right. Well, welcome back, Lusketeers. We're glad to have you with us for another episode of our podcast.
Thank you for being here today. I'm glad I'm here today. I'm glad you're here today.
Here we are. Here
It's going
they
to
are.
be
We're all here.
a great combo.
Okay. We are so excited. Today, we're going to begin a conversation that's going to be a 2-part episode. We don't often do that, but when we do,
Intriguing.
it's a cliffhanger. And this is going to be an even more suspenseful cliffhanger because there's going to be separation from episode 1 to the next installment.
What do you mean?
Meaning we have Louie and Shelly Giglio on next week.
Oh.
So we're going to let them sit there right where they are because that is a behemoth of a beautiful conversation.
A Louie and Shelly intermission.
A Louie and Shelly, yeah, exactly, an intermission. A Giglio mission. But then after that, we're going to be able to come back to part 2 of this conversation.
I like it. I like it.
So before we go any further, let me just tell you what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about the how-to, the nitty-gritty, the importance of a rite of passage ceremony if you have kids. What does it mean? What does it look like? Why does it matter to put some ceremony, some intentionality, some peanut butter and jelly on their transition from being a boy, being a girl, to being a man, to being a woman? And we don't know everything about this, but we're going to talk about what we've learned, why it's important, and a little bit about why that is awesome. Okay, Then when we come back to part 2, we're going to come back and have a conversation with Olivia Skye Lusko, our only child to have gone through one of these herself, a rite of passage. And we're going to get to all of us together, listen to her perspective on it. So today we're going to talk about like what we did and all the things. Okay. Then next time you're going to get to hear from her like, hey, that was awesome, or hey, that was terrible.
I'm on pins and needles.
Are you? She's agreed to it. Okay, so we already have
She has already.
a notarized in writing. She said, I think that would be awesome, and I would love to do that. So we're going to have Olivia come on.
We don't have it notarized and in writing. We probably should.
Yeah, I'm going to get blood samples. Like she will not be able to say no. No, but she actually is so excited about it. And while we're on, we're just going to ask her a bunch of questions about being a teenager. And it'll be really cool to kind of get her perspective on that. So I think if you're a parent, it's like getting intel. Like when Joshua, sent those spies in to Jericho, and they got to like camp out and then sleep in the rooftop of Rahab's house, and then come back out and they're like, okay, here's what we learned. So if you're a parent and you're going to get to talk to a teenager and get some intel, that maybe your 13-year-old or 14-year-old will get the benefit of her hindsight moving forward. So I think that's going to be cool.
Yeah, I love it. It's going to be great.
All right. So down to the nitty gritty about that. And if everything you're reading today or listening to today is like, man, that's amazing, I'd love to read more about this, let me point you to a resource we put together because we so commonly get asked about this. Since we did it 4 years ago when Livy was, going through it, we put together a guide. It's a rite of passage PDF. It's 12 pages long. It's beautifully formatted. It'll be maybe helpful for you to take and use this conversation and apply it to your life. So where can I get that, Jennie?
Yeah. LeviLusko.com. I
lipped that while you said it. You like that?
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. But I think it's such a great resource. And our hope is that you wouldn't do everything that we do, but that it would stir up ideas and concepts and dreams in your heart for your kids. So I think that this is going to be a great conversation.
So go to LeviLusko.com and you can there on that website find the rite of passage. You're going to have to like tool around in there. Plus in the show notes, in the YouTube description, tinker on my website, see if you can find it. But then in the show notes, we'll also put it. So you can find that rite of passage guide. I think there's like a resources thing on the site. You'll be able to find it pretty easily.
Yeah.
And then you'll get that, download it, you can read it. So today's conversation isn't going to cover everything in that because it would be redundant. What I really want to get across maybe is why would it matter? What should you do? What would be the objections to why you can't? Right? And then what should be your heartbeat and prayer in planning a rite of passage? Because my theory, just one man here, My theory is
one awesome man.
if you have a child, you should be praying and thinking and planning for what that graduation from being a child to being an adult looks like.
Yeah.
And just like we don't just have like, oh, hey, there's a king in England, you know? Hey, king. Like there's a whole thing, man. They planned and planned and planned. He had a kneel. There was a crown. There was an orb. There were horses. There was what's the phrase? Pomp and circumstance. Okay. That was acknowledging the intensity of this transition. So my theory is in America, we are not great at transitioning kids to be adults.
Yeah.
Hot take? Perhaps.
Maybe, but I think you're correct.
Well, and if you take a little trip around the world, okay, and this, by the way, was something we had been thinking about, praying about. I think both of us felt like, you know, our parents didn't really, not because they were bad, but because I don't think they were given those tools either. Mm-hmm. You know, I think my dad really came around especially right before we got married, I'm trying to be intentional about maybe teaching me about marriage. And then even my first date, I remember he told me, hey, before you take anybody on a date, pray for them. Pray before the date begins. But
it was probably more like when the occasion arose that there would be like words of wisdom, but it wasn't like specifically, hey, you're a man now. It wasn't necessarily that. Like, I feel like, for example, when I started my period, my parents gave me a promise ring and said like, so I think that kind of thing was their attempt to,
which is huge,
which is beautiful. Yeah.
Huge. And I don't think this is magic bullet. I think everything I just mentioned should be a part of it.
Totally. It's not just
preparing
one
them
thing.
for a first date, preparing for marriage, preparing for, you know, life as a sexually mature young woman. Mm-hmm. But I'm saying as far as just something that would say like, hey, I never have to doubt or wonder. I know when I was told, hey, you're beginning this process of entering the adult tribe.
Yeah.
Okay. So we had kind of been thinking about that, you know, Livy's turning 13, you know, heading towards starting 8th grade. And we were both just kind of like, there needs to be something. And I started feeling some energy. And when I feel that, I need to kind of yank on that thread some. So I start talking to people. I start researching. I come across this video on YouTube from TED, the TED Talks. This was a TEDx event. The title of the talk is An Exploration of Coming of Age Rituals in a Modern Era by Ron Fritz. This guy, he goes around the world, Jennie. He gets on an airplane in the internet and goes around the world and explores what in different cultures someone goes through to become a man or a woman. I've got a list of some of them that he mentions. He references the bungee jumping in the jungle of this one unique tribe where they have to make vines into bungee cords and the kids jump off this tower. And when they get through the end of this jump, they're an adult. And that adrenaline attached to that, the process of their dad and mom helping them make the vine, like that whole thing. He said most of them survive it. And that's good.
Oh, gosh. If you survive it, you are a man.
If the vines hold, you shall be a warrior. He also references this other group of people that they bring the kid out to the center of town and they whip them across the back over and over again. And that's like that lashing is the process of becoming like an adult. Another tribe where they have to put their hand into a glove full of the most painful, stinging ants on earth, known as bullet ants. And apparently it like takes you to a psychotic place of pain that you can't even fathom. But here's the crazy thing. And I don't recommend any of that. That's abuse. But think about it. When that boy walks around town and he's got permanent welts all over his back of his hand, guess what he sees in every other man in town? The same welts.
Whoa.
So he's been initiated into.
Those welts stay with him their whole life?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Some people die from the bullet ants.
Oh.
But the marks from them is a badge now.
Oh.
He's been jumped into a gang. And why are gangs so popular? Especially, you know, they thrive in areas where there tends to be single parent homes, people are craving for something
Belonging.
to say. You belong to something bigger than yourself. You
Yeah.
have to do, if you do this, you can be this.
Yeah.
We crave that.
Yeah.
So my point is, and the point of this TED video is, if that doesn't exist, nature abhors a vacuum. There's going to be a quest or a search for something else, right?
Right.
The video goes on to describe the bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs of Jewish culture, where there's a sense in which you're now able to be a part of like the synagogue worship and all of the rest. And then vision quests, Native American culture. There's, go off into the desert, don't drink anything, take this, medicinal herb, and now wait for, an owl or a coyote to come talk to you. And when you come back to the tribe, you have this sense of like, not only I did something everybody else has been through, but I did something hard to become this. So I'm no longer the boy that I was. I'm now the man. I'm the wolf. I'm the owl, whatever. The point is, in all of these, there's a similarity, and the theme is there's adrenaline, there's intentionality, there's a challenge or a gauntlet that's been thrown down that must be crossed or faced. And yet in our country, in America, that just doesn't exist. Maybe it's going to get your driver's license. In a horrible sense, it would be, the losing of a virginity or the day you got drunk for the first time. And that's sad.
Right.
And what does that vacuum lead to?
A dirty vacuum.
No, it leads to people craving it from somewhere else.
Right.
And John Eldridge writes, and I quote, "Until a man knows he is a man," in the same way, of course, would be true for a woman, "he will forever be trying to prove he is one, while at the same time he will shrink from anything that might reveal that he is not."
Wow.
So you think about, why is it that so many, and I can say this as we've been youth pastors, so many teens in their 13, 14, right around that time that we should be kind of like starting to speak you're a man over them as parents and as the tribe. Why is it often then that so many adolescents engage in really dangerous behavior? Because they're craving the jumping off the tower. They're craving the bullet ants in the glove.
Right.
And I can't tell you how many funerals, it's heartbreaking. ATV with no helmet on, driving fast late at night, the jumped off the roof into a pile of inner tubes. I mean, did all and broke their neck. Like, so many risky, high risk behavior, craving for something that would like there's almost like that energy's there, whether it's channeled in the right way or not is the point.
Right.
So our goal in coming around our teenage son or daughter and being deliberate about our saying, hey, you've begun this process, like the turnkey, you're not a man today, but you're beginning this process, and we're going to begin to treat and act and welcome you into.
Right. And this was born, obviously, because Olivia's age and what we were kind of thinking through, and having friends who were doing things with their kids that age. But you were also preparing, you had a message that you were working on too, that kind of talked about towards these themes.
Well, it was
right?
symbiotic. I tend to preach about what I'm learning about, and it's not like chicken. It's a little chicken and egg on that one.
Yeah.
It's so funny. I just began to start really feeling like the pressure as a parent to not miss that moment.
Yeah.
And that's also the Holy Spirit. God burdens you for things he wants you to do. We felt that.
Right.
But right around the same time, as I'm researching that, we were drawing close to Father's Day. And so May, first part of June of that year, and this is years ago now, I began to really feel like I needed to work on that, because her October birthday, well, the summer was coming, which she would begin to go into 8th grade.
Yeah.
And around that same time, as we began to write it, I began to ask questions of men and people in my life, like, hey, what was your rite of passage? Did anybody do anything for you? And I kept getting like blank stares back, like, no, my family didn't do anything. Not that they were bad, they just didn't know. They should. They hadn't had it done for them.
Right.
One guy, and I'll never forget this, his name's Mayo. He's a pastor in Alabama. I said to him, we were in a sauna, and I said, Mayo, did anybody ever come around you and do a rite of passage ceremony for you, tell you how to be a man? And he said, no. And I said, well, how did you find out? He said, it took me years, and it wasn't until I ended up in prison that someone finally put their arm on my shoulder and helped me to see I was a boy living in a man's body.
Wow.
That's what he said to me.
Wow.
And I kind of was like, am I off base writing this sermon about rite of passages and kind of doing this? Am I crazy? And when he said that, I was like, okay, there's a word in that. There are girls living in women's bodies.
Yeah.
There are young boys living in men's bodies, and we need to speak over them who God says they are.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this was an exciting assignment. And I think another thing that propelled it was also Olivia going into public school for the first time in 8th grade. And I think just considering like, okay, all the voices that are going to be coming in her way and bombarding her, and how do we want to set her up to win and to be confident going into a new environment. And so I think it all just kind of culminated perfectly. And I'm so thankful for God's timing.
And God tends to speak in stereo, right? We've all experienced that. Okay. So I'm studying all this on it's in my heart. We're thinking about it. We're planning this. We're like, cause we're kind of scared. How do sending her to 8th grade? It's like the wolves, right? Same exact time. We had some friends came into town on vacation named the Corneliuses. They lead a church in Texas. And they were like, hey, while we're in town, we want to do something to celebrate our daughter becoming a woman. We're going to do this whole thing. And so they were kind of telling us what they were doing. And it was like, man, God, could you just be shouting from a megaphone any louder?
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of the backstory on why it's so important. And like I said, you can go to levilusko.com to kind of download the guide that kind of spells it all out. But what we want to do is just talk a little bit about perhaps what this could look like if you're a mom or dad.
Yeah.
Okay. And the ingredients, and I don't want you to feel like, oh gosh, Levi and Jennie, you're crazy and you have paddle boards and you got this and you live near a river. And so we can't do all that. We live in Philadelphia. Look, God never calls you to do what you can't. He calls you to do what you can.
Amen.
And he calls you to do it with what you have.
Yes.
So you don't need a paddleboard or a river or to live in Montana to do a rite of passage.
Yes.
The key is being deliberate to come around your daughter or your son. And you know what? Better late than never. If you're like, I missed 13. Okay, well, have a special dinner and do it when you're 17. Better to do something than to do nothing.
Yeah.
And better to not go, well, because I can't do this, I'm not doing anything. Instead to say, hey, how special would it be to have a special dinner at go to Ruth's Chris or go to P.F. Chang's or go to Applebee's or go to, Hardee's, whatever your child's favorite restaurant is, and say, hey, I wish when you were 13 we would have done this, but we didn't, and we're going to dress up and talk about this, and I just want to impart some things to you, and I want to tell you, I want to treat you and start to look at you like an adult part of the tribe, and that that way you'll never have to wonder, where do I stand? Do I have what it takes?
Yeah.
Who do I go to when I'm in trouble? Just what does that look like? And if you have a 3-year-old, if you have a 2-year-old, even in your heart, just begin to pray about this. See this as something, hey, 10 years from now, 12 years from now, this could be a really pivotal, monumental thing. And again, like I said, 2 episodes from now, we'll hear from Olivia, and you'll be able to hear
the
from
real
her
story,
what this meant to her, what this looked like to her.
I think that's such a great point that you bring up, because I think so often in this world we live in such a comparison culture where it's like, oh, well, if I had that, then I would do this. But I think that what's so beautiful is God gives us each the ingredients of the life that he's called us to live within our constraints and within our sphere of influence and within our church community and within our city, within where we live. And so I think that that's just kind of a beautiful opportunity to just start, like you said, to think creatively of what could this be. And our prayer is that this would just spark ideas and thoughts, and maybe you start a little note in your phone of possible.
And that's where
ideas.
It started with us. We were just brainstorming. I think for weeks and weeks we would add ideas to it and what this day could look like. The big thing was we wanted it to be memorable. We wanted it to feel intentional, and we wanted it to be emotional, so there was a lot of components to it. And then also tribal, so that there was other women's. I really am a strong believer. And especially, hear me, if you're a single dad and you're raising your daughter or son and or a single mom, and you go, I don't have a dad to be there. I don't have hey, look, that's what the body of Christ is for.
Yeah.
So reach out to your church, ask if your campus pastor could come, or ask if the small group leader in your child's youth group could be there, your child's youth pastor. We actually sat Olivia down and said, who are the women who you look up to? Who are the women in our church and in your life? And, as we travel, there's a few women that have really made a mark on Liv, and who are those women that if you could say, these are the ones I really want to look at to model me being a woman after.
Yeah.
So she writes this list down. We invited for that day, for a part of the day. And if you get the PDF, you'll see all that. We're not going to go into it all here because it's all written out.
Yeah.
But we wanted them to be a part of it. The ones who couldn't physically get there, they sent videos. And then there was even one that she put on the list that was confusing to us because it was a movie star. But you reached out. I tell that story in my book, The Last Supper on the Moon, in the chapter Rite of Passage, actually, where there's tons of this in that book as well.
Yeah.
We reached out to that movie star, and she actually unbelievably played a part in Olivia's Rite of Passage.
She wrote a card. She wrote a little card for her.
A handwritten
She still
note.
has that hanging up in her room.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And again, that was the cherry on top.
Yeah,
That was certainly not the ice cream sundae of this day.
Yes.
And we told her to put it on the calendar, so she knew it was coming. So there was a sense of anticipation. This wasn't last minute or a surprise. She knew this day was approaching. Hey, this is going to be a day where we really just kind of come around. What is the idea of you beginning this transition from young woman to more, and she's still on that journey. She's still 17. So it's not like that day ended and she's now like just autonomous, doing whatever she wants. But we just wanted to say, we recognize this transition so no one gets whiplash. I think a lot of kids get off to, I saw it like crazy when I was a youth pastor, when we were doing youth ministry. Kids, they're kept in the basement, sheltered, no Christian, secular music, no secular movies, no chocolate after 8 p.m. And then they get to 18, man, they go off to state school. They can do whatever they want. And sometimes they go and do whatever they want.
Yeah.
They just get all the controls right away. Man, we want a graduated throttle being released.
Yeah. Such wisdom.
Kind of like Lennox's little scooter, right?
Yes. Oh, his little scooter. It's good.
He had a little bit of the motorbike access and a little more and a little more. And he wasn't ready for full unbridled access to the little e-bike scooter thing.
Right.
He needed a little bit at a time.
Yeah.
And so do your kids. But you have to kind of formalize, hey, this is the beginning of that. You're being handed more autonomy.
Yeah.
We want to acknowledge that.
Yeah. So this we did in summer before she started 8th grade. But again, this could happen whenever. But I think one thing that was special was tailoring it to her. And so I think that that's one thing that's, as you're taking notes about this particular thing, is learning what things that your child loves. And I think like we started off the day at breakfast at Chick-fil-A because that's her favorite. And
slash everybody's favorite.
Everybody's.
Who doesn't love Chick-fil-A?
Well.
Yeah. It was based on something she really enjoyed.
Yeah. And then honestly, like, yes, there was planning that went into it. That morning, it was kind of like okay, we're actually finalizing it, getting it all ready, envelopes of the clues of what's the next thing.
We had to have helpers go out and put stuff and stash stuff. And it was kind of, for us, it was a scavenger hunt.
Yeah.
She didn't know until she solved each clue where she was to go for the next clue.
Like a mystery scavenger hunt.
And it's literally, I think it started at 9 a.m. and didn't end till like 10 p.m.
Yeah. And it was a family thing. So we brought our other kids to be a part of different things. And I think, and again, this is all on the Rite of Passage thing, but I think we realized that with Livy's sister, Elenia, going to heaven, we realized that in all of our visits to the grave site, that she had never gone by herself. And so as intense as it sounds, it was actually a really special thing that ended up being where after breakfast, we parked on the other side of the cemetery and then had her walk with flowers to the grave. And then there was like a little blanket with a little gift for her on behalf of Elenia. And I think that even that, like for a 13-year-old to go to her sister's grave, like just thinking through those kind of things, like what would be
and maybe it
impactful.
Could be your child's grandparents' grave, or there's some way to acknowledge your wider family.
Yeah,
right?
Wider family, eternity, the brevity and the beauty of our life. And I don't know exactly, honestly. I think we wrote.
Well,
the envelopes of the things we wrote down.
To the effect of, even from heaven, your sister's always going to be part of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And what you faced in her going to be with Jesus, that has shaped you, and in a good way. It doesn't have to be a bad way. Your pain and the trauma of that can be used by God for power. So that was the essence of what we wanted to communicate through that being a part of it.
Right.
And that was really special. That ended up being really life-giving. And it went on from there. There's a number of different challenges. One of our favorites was that she had to go into a grocery store, find a random person or family who she deemed maybe God would nudge her to help them. And she had to offer and pay for their groceries at the checkout, which was so outside of the comfort zone for her. That'll be fun to ask her about, because it was just like, she had to walk up to a stranger and offer to pay for their food and groceries and the things like that. Because it was, each of the points was trying to create a value that we hope that she will, and that she'll need in her journey of being a woman in this world.
Yeah. Now, what was that like for you as Liv's dad, thinking through these things and watching her being challenged? Because I imagine when it's Lennox's turn, it'll feel a little different for me.
We're going to shave mohawks. We're going to go live in the Sahara Desert for 12 days with no food. We're going to do some crazy things.
Oh my gosh.
Get you ready.
You're already taking notes on that one.
I don't need it. I'm ready. It's going to be like the Amazing Race. It's already happening. It's going to be crazy. We are bungee jumping off of the Brooklyn Bridge. Yeah. I don't even know if that's legal. Probably not. Well, good luck. Good luck stopping us.
So
NYPD.
Being the father
please
of
do not
the
take me seriously.
Daughter.
Just police start coming in from every direction. Well, I think we both felt, and I feel uniquely, as a dad to my kids, that power to confer blessing. There's a sense in which you need to do that. And you were so crucial to her going up the waters of womanhood. We use that language because she had to go up a river. And we had a surprise. We told her she was going to have to go alone. But then halfway through, you were there and offered to ride with her if she wanted to.
Yeah.
And she did accept that. And she had to go upstream, up a river, fight her way up to the lake and all the things. And it was so neat because what we were trying to communicate was she has to go it alone, but she can choose the right people.
Yeah.
And that no one will love her more than you. And that you will always be there, as even from heaven, to seek to be an example and a guide to her as her mother, and that relationship knowing. And cultivating that and encouraging that and coming around that was so special and powerful.
Yeah.
Acknowledging and not feeling jealous of all the women that she put on that list.
Totally.
Because they're bamboo stakes in God's garden.
Yes.
We believe the church is meant to be like a greenhouse. And the biggest thing you have to do as a parent is not be jealous when your kids tell you someone told them something you've told them 100 times, but now they actually care about it. And I think the degree to which you can have the skin that's thick enough to handle that and just smile, even if you have to bite your tongue so hard it bleeds a little, and not go, I've been telling you that since the 3rd grade. It'd be like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing that Mackenzie said that.
Yeah.
And she put it that way. It made sense. Praise God.
Yeah.
That's why we've partnered with the local church to raise these kids.
Yes.
And so to not kick against it, but actually lean into that, because they're going to be calling someone when they push against you. All kids have to push against their parents at some point. But if you've done the right job of creating the community around them, the people they rebel against you to go and spend time with, you're like fist pumping on the back corner because you.
All according to my plan.
You don't like me. You only like Mackenzie and Mickey and Sophia and whoever else it is in that season. It's kind of there around her. It's good you like them more than me right now. That's what I wanted. That's what we hoped for.
Yeah.
That's the best possible scenario.
And honestly, after that day, even when she entered into 8th grade and just complexities of friendships and relationships and just school dynamics and everything, like, it was such a beautiful tool to circle back and say, hey, Livy, what in this moment right now, with the wisdom that Shelley gave you on this day, in this moment, what would you do based on that, like, advice and that wisdom? And I think it was just such a strengthening thing, even for us in parenting, to go back to something that maybe we would say in the moment, but that she could circle back and remember what someone else said. Hey, Olivia, you're chosen, you're called, you're beautiful, you're confident, God's with you. Like just those things that, like you said earlier, is surround sound, but for her surround sound, for her to know that there were all these wise voices in her life pointing her in the right direction.
And we gave opportunity at a point in the evening, and she didn't know they were all going to be there and speaking into it, but they all spoke these words over her, and then we made sure to separately get them down so she would have permanent access to them and not rely on her memory forever.
Yeah, which I need to still give to her.
Oh, yeah. Well, you guys were on a journey. All right, so the formalizing of that is amazing. Then the night ended with her family coming around her in a private kind of ceremony.
Yeah, we were around the fire at home.
We all put our hands on her. Her brother prayed for her, as best as he could. He was,
Thank you, Jesus.
And Lennox's little prayer. So the other day he prayed for me before I preached. He said, God, I pray you would give Dad the good word. Amen. And I was like, I've never been prayed for better. The good word. That's exactly what I want to preach.
I know.
Good word.
The good word.
Dad, I love that. I love King Jesus. He's just his little things, just so matter of fact. It's wonderful.
I know.
So
write him down.
We all put our hands on her. Her sisters spoke life over her. I said, hey, I'll never know what it's like to be a woman, but I'll always be your father, and I confer blessing on you and speak life over you. You're a woman. God has his hand on you. You have what it takes. You have the Holy Spirit. You're gonna always have us, but you don't have to wonder like where you sit and where you stand. And yeah, we prayed for her. It was just wonderful.
It was so beautiful. And it's so simple. And you could do something like that with no budget. I mean, you don't have to spend money on it, is all I'm trying to say. And that's probably even more the most beautiful creative thing is just thinking through like, okay, what can we do and what would be the most meaningful and impactful? And it doesn't have to be extravagant, and it can be a beautiful thing. And even if it is just that,
you don't have to spend like
life
My
over.
Sweet 16, like on TV.
I don't know.
Get a pony. Isn't that a TV show?
Oh.
Sweet 16.
I don't know.
Just spend lavish amounts of money on those crazy parties. Or the quinceañera is kind of an equivalent to that, by the way. There's another example of another culture that comes around.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so we're going to wrap this up. We just really want you, Mom and Dad, listening to this, just to know there's an important call in your life. And it's not just to make sure your kids,
or guardian,
grandparent. Yeah, you could agitate towards this, even if you're not, you could encourage this, or hey, what about this? We could do it, and it can all be scaled, and it's never too late.
Yeah. And
I mean, just thinking about, I don't want you to feel shame because you didn't know to do this, because no one did that for you, and it doesn't have to look like what ours looked like.
Right.
Right. Your doesn't have to involve an ice bath. Okay,
yes.
That's unique.
Our heart is to encourage you in what God has for you to do. And even, if you're older and your kids are all older, like, it's okay.
It could be a letter. You could write them a letter.
Yeah.
Speak that blessing. It's never too late to impart that blessing.
Never too late to bless. Never too late to bless.
That'll preach, Jennie Lusko. You had the good word. Never too late to bless. Yes, because you have power in your hands to bless and speak blessing.
Yeah.
And to say that and to do that. And God is so good. Our friends who are coming on the podcast next week, Louis and Shelley Giglio, Louis likes to say that in God's trees, the sap can flow from the branch to the trunk and not just trunk to branch, meaning kids can actually speak blessing to parents. And I've really seen that happen in the body of Christ where a child can actually be used to bring kind of blessing to dads and moms that they didn't even know they needed.
Yeah.
And that's a really cool thing too.
I love that.
So
beautiful.
All right. Well, bless. And that hopefully was helpful to you. Once again, grab that Rite of Passage PDF. Let us know how it goes. Goodness, if you do one of these days for a teenager or part of this, please tag us on Instagram so we can see it.
And we're in it with you. We're getting ready to scheme and plan for daisies. So we're in it with you. We're not,
Yeah, we got multiple more.
Yeah, multiple more.
Before Lennox and I set sail for the Saharan and then never come back because we're going to be lost in the...
And just be men all alone.
In the Sahara. That's the plan. All right, that's the dream. That's what anybody could ever hope for. Bullet ants, here we come.
Oh, God.
All right, we'll see you next week. Lusketers, we love you very much.
Love you.
Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to swing by levilusko.com and jennielusko.com to see what's going on in our world.
And make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. And in the meantime, we would love to connect with you on social media.
Jennie and Levi Lusko, out.